Welcome everybody. Thanks for the Sauce Lab folks for having me. We're excited to talk about Test Armada and the testing tools we are doing at Walmart. As Ken said, I'm Pranav. I'm a Senior Engineering Manager for Developer Tools team at Walmart. And today we'll talk about testing infrastructure at scale. Scope, let's dig in. So first agenda for the talk, we'll start with the introduction. You heard Test Armada. Let's talk about what is Test Armada. We'll talk about how it plugs into the CI/CD ecosystem for Walmart, how we use it in the CI/CD pipeline. We'll talk about how Test Armada is built in, the ecosystem, and how it's being used inside Walmart and outside. We'll also discuss about the infrastructure at scale, some problems which we are solving at Walmart scale. We'll also show you the self-service portal we have, which is not open source, but we'll just give you a sneak preview of how things look. And then question and answers, we'll go from there. All right, let's start. So at a very high level, the definition, Test Armada is end-to-end test platform for web, native, and backend services with actionable reporting capabilities. And the reporting part is very important because you can do all the test framework unless you're getting actionable insights, you cannot take action on that. So actionable insights are very important because unless you have that, you cannot take action on that. So we have spent a lot of time in making sure that the test runs which are happening are getting insights and they're actionable where people can take action quickly on that. So instead of going through some boring slides on that, I'll just want to show you guys how our site looks, and it has all details about Test Armada. This is the public site, testarmada.io. At very high level, Test Armada follows this naval theme. So everything is about some Navy stuff, all our projects, all our fleets, everything is naval based. So we call it fleets. At very high level, we have these 4 fleets in our ecosystem: functional testing, marking, performance testing, and data insights. A few of them are coming soon level, which is we are going to open source very soon. They are internally available at Walmart, but we are going to open source it very soon. But the way it works is you want to know more about us, you come to functional testing, you click on learn more, all different platforms we support. If you are targeting certain platform, let's say you are targeting remote RWeb, how you get started, developer guide, all those informations are here. So, and this applies to all the other fleets also, so you exactly know how and where to use these things. And all the things you will see over here are all open source on GitHub already, so you can just go to github.com/testarmada. That's our GitHub link. You can see all our projects there and start using it. Going back to the site, we also have other fleets like functional testing is very self-explanatory. It's about testing the functional test. We have also invested a lot in mocking, which is very important to have reliable tests. Often, I mean, if you have doing a POC testing, showing some tests very quickly, people can do that. But if you want to do it reliably, where people are only getting notified when an actual failure happens, not because some web service decided not to work that second, that's where we have mocking enabled, where we invest a lot in terms of during the PR time, we mock all the dependencies. So if the test fails, as an engineering team, you know the failure happened because your test failed because of your service, not some third-party service. So we have tools for from the mocking tool set where for web, for native app, for all different sites which enable that. And we also work on recording the mock data, so make it easy to record and maintain the mock data. More on that, maybe sometime later we can talk about once the open source mocking tool is called Midway, it's coming soon. We'll talk more about it. On the performance testing side, we support both client and client and services. On the client side, the web, all the mobile web things, and services at the backend side. We'll get more details later on. And the data inside, which I was talking about, this is a separate fleet for us. This is where we store all the data in our platform, and we have our own React-based whole platform where you can see all the UI dashboards. So that's at a high level the website, and as a core feature for us is these things, like making sure it's developer friendly, massively parallel, because we run thousands of tests in parallel. We have capabilities for that. Making sure we are multi-platform, reliable and deterministic. As I said, that's the core feature for any automation project to be successful. Unless you are reliable and deterministic, developers will very soon lose interest in it. Nobody would care when your build goes red. And then again, automation culture, where people make it so easy that people do more automation. And lastly, the dashboards thing. So these are at high level our core values. Going back to the deck. So I just went to the site. Let's talk about the CI/CD integration, how at Walmart we have the Test Armada working in the CI/CD pipeline. So at very high level, this is how everybody does that, right? Like you have code which goes to dev, QA, staging, and prod. That's a very high level ecosystem. And what Test Armada does is it creates this concept of quality gates. We are not there to create tests for the team. We create features and tools so that people can build these gates as per their own specifications. So these gates get built at each and every level, like at dev, QA, stage, prod. Ultimately, all these stages, they have their own gates. And some teams can choose that I don't want to have performance gate at PR. I only want to have it at deploy level, or I want to have security gate at a certain level. All these different kinds of gates could be enabled based on team specification. They can have different thresholds, decide what makes sense for their own project. And these gates eventually decide they are the gatekeeper to make sure the code progresses from one level to another. And ultimately, that's how the code transforms from a developer laptop to a production environment. This whole flow is completely automated. Every time you check in the code, like standard, GitHub, test, all that happens. The extra thing which we do, the data insight part, because every time it fails, the measure of success over there is how fast you can understand what the failure was. And I'll show you guys later on how that reporting looks, how our engineering teams can quickly figure out the failure and go fix it. So that's where the data insight thing come in. We show not only the data, but trending data also. So there could be some failures which are at that test suite level happen, but there are some other issues which you can only see if you have trending data. If you want to see across 3 or 6 months what tests are failing a lot, like things which, this is the slowest test case for last 6 months. These are tests which are flaky. They pass after 2 retries most of the times. All that kind of information gets surfaces through trending data, and that's what we show during our data insights side. All right, moving on. Let's talk about what tools we have, how we created this whole platform for different fleet level. So on the performance automation side, pretty much all of Test Armada, we are very big open source supporters. So wherever we can, we try to use some open source tool. We just build on top of that. So on performance automation side, for backend testing, we have built a tool on top of JMeter. On the client side, browser testing, we have 2 tools right now, SiteSpeed.io and Web Page Test for different purposes. SiteSpeed, we use that during our continuous phase when the CI gates, which works really well over there. But for synthetic testing, when we want to test our site from production, how it's behaving on different browsers, SiteSpeed doesn't support beyond Chrome and Firefox, but if you want to have real devices and other browser support, Web Page Test has a lot more browser supported, so we use that for that use case. At the end, they all come to our data insight platform, so you still get the same data. But the key factor here is that you decide and choose what tool is best for your use case. So that's how for client side, you can pick between SiteSpeed and Web Page Test. And again, it's as a service, so from user's perspective, they don't care what tool's being inside. It's just they set up the test and we run it on the back. For mocking, our JavaScript solution is based on Happy.js. It's a service on top of Happy.js, which at the end of the day, it's just a HTTP service, which is very fine-tuned for mocking. You can tell that server what to record, and there's a lot of cool things we have done over there in terms of, like one common use case for mocking is, yes, you have a mock server and you have a test running and it's returning you any value, typically how all the mock server works. But the moment you start thinking in terms of massively parallel scale, where you have 10 parallel test cases running and they all want to talk to the same mock server and expect different data points, that's where things start getting confusing, because either you will go and have some very convoluted header mapping or some other URL matching to figure out what data to return. That's where we have our own session-based mocking. So every time when a test starts, they get their own session. That's where we use Happy for all those capabilities. And at the end of the day, all these parallel tests, they get their own mock server in a way. And that's how we can scale and do parallel testing also. We have a similar solution very dedicated for Android testing. Venice is here from my team. He worked on that. We call it, based on WireMock, it's on top of WireMock server. It's a very popular open source Java project for mocking. I don't know. How many of you have heard about WireMock here? Okay, yeah, so it's just built on top of that. What we use it, especially for Android side, is that we can package, especially for instrumented test, we can package it with the test cases. The APK file not only contains the test, it also contains the mock data, so it can run in airplane mode directly. Moving on for self-service portal, it's pretty standard, React Redux Core, that's web stack we have. We do use Grafana for some embedding, but the overall view is inside the React flow, and we'll show that a little later in the slides. For functional automation, pretty standard, Selenium, Appium are obviously Selenium Meetup. Everybody knows about Selenium here. That's our tool of choice. In terms of framework which uses Selenium and Appium, we have Nightwatch is the most popular. Nightwatch.js is the most popular framework inside Walmart right now. Pretty much all the web teams are standardized on Nightwatch.js. We do have a runner on top of it called Magellan. You guys can check it out on our open source project. Basically, that enables all the parallel running, mocking integration, all that happens through that. For instrumented test, we have Espresso for Android testing, Cucumber for TDD BED-based testing. A lot of people prefer Cucumber-based test. Again, Mocha, TestNG, JUnit, all these are very popular frameworks. One thing we have learned is you cannot have one framework for all the teams. Like the moment you say everybody has to do things on Mocha, 10 teams would say that we don't want to do it. So we'll talk more about it later in this my slide, but we have tried to make it more optional. People can pick and choose what they want to. Test Armada is not dictating that you have to use this framework only. You can pick what framework you want, and then we can integrate at different levels. Because there could be a team which is very happy with their backend TestNG test cases. They don't want any extra library, any extra plugin, but they may want just actionable insights. So we can just provide a listener to them so that it comes to our reporting and integrate at just that level. There could be teams who are interested in using Sauce Labs. So we can give more plugins for them so they can integrate with Sauce Labs and all the other things which comes with that. So that's the whole methodology that we are trying to be developer friendly, not an enforcer, just to see where it makes sense. Again, on the data insight infrastructure side, we have a huge, massive pipeline which standard Kafka Storm system, which we use for all these different test agents I spoke about. They all ultimately put data in our Kafka data stream. And through Storm, we store it in Cassandra Storm, Cassandra Solar, or CairoDB, sorry, I was just missing that name. So Kairos DB or Cassandra or Solar, these are databases where we get all the data stored. And eventually that's what our self-service UI uses to create all those data insights platform. Moving on, this is in terms of usage, how is being used this platform across Walmart. Ken was saying about different teams we have at Walmart. At world scale, you can see we have teams in multiple offices in the US, but we also have Canada, Mexico, Bangalore, UK, all these offices. And we have our footprint across all these offices. Right now, we have close to 85 projects onboarded in our system. We have target for like getting beyond 200 teams by 2020. We store every time somebody tests run thanks to our data insight platform. We know roughly we run 50,000 tests every day just through our platform and we did our calculation in terms of how much time it takes for doing it manual. That's how we get this hour saved. It's a little above 1 million hour right now. It's like 1,050,000 something. But this is like latest data, which we take a lot of pride in that this is what we are saving. We have executed close to 17 million tests through the system in the last 2 years. And The mocked API call is the server we use. Every time somebody uses that server to mock something, we know how many times it got mocked. So overall, we have mocked more than 162 million URLs through this tool. And again, these are different teams. Walmart website. We also have a lot of Walmart partners, like like Walmart sites, which are part of the Walmart ecosystem, like Jet.com, Hayneedle, all those. They are also using our solution. And there are other regular Walmart teams which are overall making up this whole ecosystem.
Question.
Sure.
There was an ERP, like ERP, SAP kind of ERPs in this
I'm sure there are that's being used in somewhere in Walmart, but this is standard Walmart.com and Walmart mobile apps. Okay. That's what we're targeting at. If somebody's using it, ERP or some other, we may deal with services. Again, we are not involved in writing the test. It's more about, at the end of the day, you're using either web, native, or some kind of service. Right. So we use that. And what's happening behind the thing, it's each team's prerogative. They are deciding what they want to do with that. It's tough to know like what all products we are using outside, but these are some companies which we know have been using Test Armada based on their questions or contribution to our GitHub site. As it's a little tough, especially with NPM libraries and other things, to track how many teams are actually using it. So we don't know how many companies actually, but these are few companies which we know which have interfaced with us in the past to use Test Armada. Moving on, so let's talk about infrastructure at scale. We had three high-level problems which I want to talk about. Today for this talk, I'm going to talk about only one, but I'll briefly explain about these three problems which we are solving, and then I'll dig deeper into one. So the first one, continuous integration. The automation at scale when you have all these Walmart teams running tests at the same time, trying to get resources, making sure that a test runs faster at the same time. Everybody wants their PR to get done in 5 minutes. And we have limited number of resources. And at one point, if you have thousands of test cases, and even if you have hundreds of test cases, the moment you start running it on 10 different browsers, they easily become in thousands. And that's where teams start making choices that I have to cut either test or I have to cut either browser, because you don't have hardware to scale it. So we have done a lot of work on the continuous integration side that we not only do parallel at one level, but we have the second level of where we do sharding. So you have multiple Jenkins slaves running multiple parallel threads. So we have two levels of parallelization happening to achieve those hundreds of threads running in parallel. Because you can run 50, 60 threads in one slave, but the moment you're talking about hundreds of threads, you need to have a cluster over there also. So we have this whole system based on Docker-based Kubernetes cluster, which can run it on the fly and expand. Yes?
Is that because you're running Mocha each process is running its own instance of Mocha?
So Mocha is, actually Mocha is not that popular, widely used for front-end testing. It's more for web services testing where the parallel doesn't impact much. But yes, you're right. Like when you do the processes, Mocha in Coherent by default doesn't support parallel testing. So you have for each thread, if you are doing Mocha, you'll have one process each for that. Right. And that's where at certain point that slave will run out of utilization. And we know that by standard we go for, I don't think we have ever got more than 70, 80 threads on a slave which we have. So if you want to go from 80 to 800, you need to have 10 slaves in parallel. And that's what we have built where all these slaves run and ultimately push result to the same system so you can see it all together. It's all completely abstracted from engineering team perspective. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I was just wondering, I mean, if you're running these tests concurrently, then you don't have to worry about the threads. You're running one thread and your IO is the same. So it's like,
but even then,
we can talk after.
Correct, yeah, sure. But even then, I was talking about those mock servers. Yeah. So it all, you have to scale at multiple levels. That mock server also gets dedicated for a test. So we don't want to do a dedicated mock server for everything. For CI, we have a dedicated mock server. So we've also built an app for the test. So it's the whole idea is to keep tests completely isolated and repeatable. The moment you start sharing the hosted system, that's where all the variance and volatility starts creeping in. But good question, thank you. Second, automation cloud. I'll get back to this because this is what I want to dig deep in and talk more about it, especially because we're in Sauce Lab, I want to talk more about automation cloud in detail. And third one, data insights. This is where, again, in terms of reporting, one thing we have done is you run tests, you have a functional test, you have a performance test, and 3 different kind of functional tests, 3 different performance tests. They all are getting to 5 different places. And then you also want to see some Jira details or some GitHub details, which you want to stack all into one place. That's for data insight. One more thing for scaling, we have done is that you will see all thing in one place. You can see your PR job, master verify job, performance job, all in one place. So I'll show that also in a later slide, like how that's reporting looks like. But let's talk about automation cloud. And for automation cloud, the problem we were trying to solve is how we test on all the different supported browser and devices. And especially when you're talking about Walmart scale, we support everything from iOS 8.4 plus, Android probably 5.0 plus, all those different variations and combinations. And often things fail on some obscure old Android device. It won't fail on Galaxy S9 or Pixel 2. It'll be like Galaxy S5 or Moto G4, and you have to figure out how to run those tests. So our goal was how to come up with a reliable solution, because again, reliability is the core for everything we do. Unless it's reliable, nobody will trust that data, nobody will look at that automation again. So to solving that at scale, we built a solution called Resource Manager. Before I get a little more into that, just to give you context, think about these hundreds of teams using all these automation clouds at the same time. And you have to balance all those resources to make sure it's going to have an expected behavior. Like if you are a team, if it's, you need to expect that if I run this test, my PR job would pass. You have to make sure that they get the desired resources and it runs in the reliable time. So we built some special features for this resource manager. This is a service, but there's this reconciliation engine. What happens is every time resource manager takes a note of that this node is busy right now for this team. And as all of you must have seen, sometimes your test will time out or it won't let the service know that I'm free now. The service, and it will still keep mapping to the test which was running. So reconciliation engine, what it does it goes make a call to Sauce Lab, check if this resource is already in use or not, it has been changed, then it goes and mark it free. So like especially for our private cloud devices, which we have less number of devices, it's very important to make sure that we're using the devices correctly. And if something is saying that's in use, it's really in use. So reconciliation engine is a batch process which runs and makes sure that our status is fresh. Also, the quota management, it's very easy to hog all these automation cloud when it's easy to run tests at high scale. You can easily, just 100 tests, you can run it in 1,000 tests in one shot you have 10 browsers. So we have to make sure that different teams have a certain quota assigned, that they don't go beyond that. So we manage that also. And lastly, some priority management, like your PR jobs are more high priority than your some tests or manual job somewhere. So that part, this takes care of understanding the priority of the test and managing the resources based on that. And with that, if you think about it, overall, Resource Manager has this whole plugin architecture. We interface with Sauce Lab, test objects, but we have made the system in such a way that in future, if we want to talk to some other automation cloud, some other system, it should be plugin based, we can add it. So we have right now 3 different kinds of plugins which we use. A browser plugin for all the Sauce Labs and internal labs also, a device plugin for all the device clouds, and test agent plugin is mostly for our performance test, which are responsible for our internal VMs or some on external clouds also, which we are maintaining ourselves. And these eventually talk to the internal and external cloud. You will see this lock sign next to external cloud. I want to talk a little bit more about that. What we have done is we use Sauce Connect to make sure that all these browsers which are running in Sauce Lab ecosystem can talk back to our internal system, because all this PR verify jobs are not outside. If you want to test it, it has to be internal. And and this has to be completely isolated because InfoSec team doesn't not like that Source Connect is talking to all the Jenkins slaves. So we have built a DMZ server of sort, which is a cluster of Source Connect tunnels, which we maintain for all the teams. So every team has always a fixed list of tunnels running, and that supports all the CI jobs. And every internal test which are running goes through this tunnel and run the test. Again, this plugin makes a call that though we have running most of the test cases on Source Lab and test objects, but we do have some backup internal grid where we can run tests if we need to. So we have plugins for that. If we want to move back to some other internal cloud for some issue, we can take care of that as well. Same thing for device plugin, which I said test objects and our internal cloud. We also use internal cloud for our synthetic testing, like WPT and some performance tools which are not widely supported in Automation Cloud. We use that for those things. And for test agent plugins is our backend performance test and all. So this is how the whole ecosystem works. You have plugins for each and different Automation Cloud, which ultimately get us to these browsers or different devices, resources. Any questions on that? So once we have that, just want to talk a little bit about benefits, how we, a key metric to show what this system can allow us. So we have roughly 800 different browser or emulator, I think 800 browser combination and 200 or 300 emulators which Source Lab provides. Then we have test object, we have a private cloud, so we define our own number of devices, our own number of configurations based on Walmart usage or Walmart customer usage, that depends on that. And then we have our own internal lab, which is again based on internal requirement, we keep it. It's very smaller number of things, only for more like a backup system. If something goes wrong outside, you have to do something internally for that. And if you use all that with our Test Armada resource manager, ultimately result into 1,000+ unique combination. So earlier I was talking about how we run like 50,000 test cases. So just to give you this automation cloud at scale in a number wise, imagine if we had run all those 50,000 cases on all these 1,000+ different combinations, and assuming that each test takes 3 minutes or 4 minutes to finish, that will mean almost 250,000 developer hours if we had run all our tests on all these combinations. And if you just think 8 hours per day for developer, that means like 30,000 developers are working for us doing all these tests using the Source Lab Cloud. So that's just a way of looking at the scale, how it really helps us and how much power we have with the Automation Cloud. Moving on. So next thing I want to quickly show you guys, this is going to be live. I'm going to show you our internal self-service portal, how it looks, and the reporting I was just talking about. So just 1 second. Somehow my Chrome was not working today, so I moved on to. So this is our self-service portal. Like anybody at Walmart who wants to use Test Armada gets this portal view where you can come, create a new project. You have to provide your project name, your GitHub repository. And it's a process, next. Ultimately, what it does is it creates a pull request to your GitHub repository, and that takes care of all the configuration, your CI jobs, your report integration, everything is taken care of. And once you're done with that, you see like this kind of different projects, which are, one of this would be a Walmart Teams project. So for today, for example, let's take homepage, Walmart homepage site. So these play cards you see are different CI jobs they have right now configured. There is a functional master verify job, the first one. This is the functional testing. There's another functional testing for PR verify. Again, for deploy verify, there are 4 functional tests. And then they have 1 performance test planned for client performance, which is not hooked up to PR verify. They have decided just keep it on the side just to see what the data is running every build over build. And you can see it's hooked with master verify, merged to, it only gets triggered during the master phase. And same thing for, I think this is a random test, but you can have a backend test also, likewise, or JMeter test you can configure. So in terms of how it looks, let's look at the PR reports, PR verify reports for this. This is actual data right now loading from actual test. This is the trending data for last 2 days. If you want to see for, let's say, all time. This is overall how it looks, how much time it took, number of runs, overall pass and fail rate. And also every time a test runs, you see that PR commit and you can see the run. So like the latest one was 525 today and it failed. If you want to get more details, you come here to this page and okay. So apparently one test case failed here. If you want to see what failed, this is a list of all test cases across all the browsers to run pass and fail. If you quickly want to see what failed, you just click on the fail. So you know this test case failed on IE Edge 17, that's the issue over here. So you click on this to get the third level of view. Actually, before you go there, I just want to show one more thing. We also show you the slowest test case in that run. So if you want to see the top 5 slowest test case, so you can go and improvise on it, you can see that. Plus, if you want to see how many tests got fast after retries. People have retries or 2 or 3, and often what does it masks the volatility in your system. So we want to make sure that you see that. So that's why like this test passed after 2 retries. So we just want to store that. Actually it didn't pass because we had 2 retries and it failed. Others passed after 1 retry. So if you want to see what happened over here, you click on this. And we are showing this information so it worked on all these browsers, but it failed on Edge 17. So this is the CI log from our Jenkins, what happened. You can quickly see that over here. And you can also play the recording. You click on that, it directly takes you to Sauce Lab video, where this test ran. And I hope it loads. I'm in Sauce Lab, it should load. Otherwise, I know the people who can fix it. Okay. I need to log in. Just 1 second. Yeah, so I was just saying, like, you get 3 levels of reporting over here, and we're adding more and more features. Any questions on this? Okay.
Self-service portal is not open source.
Not yet. This is something we have to.
Walmart Labs.
This is only for Walmart Lab. This is something we're going to open source. We are planning to do it maybe next year. There's a lot of CI integration. We have to figure out if this PR thing happens in real world. Should we do it on Travis or some other CI system? There are things we have to figure out first. But everything which powers this is already open source. All the test agents, all the mocking, those things would be open source.
That is part of the package.
Correct. The site. Yeah, exactly. All right. So, yes. Sorry.
So, does it have any feature that you can see the step statistics? So, which step took a lot of time?
Right. That's a great question. So this is actually, we have heard that, especially it happens for Cucumber-like frameworks, where you're doing it, you have the steps thing. We are adding that support. So as I said, like this whole thing is built from scratch up, so we can define our own reporting panels. Not only that, for backend test, there's some requests around, we want to see package-based grouping, not only the test cases. So these are something which we are actually working this quarter for Self-Service Portal, that will have steps-wise and package-wise grouped reports. Okay. Any more questions on that? No. Moving on. So these are some other external tech talks we are doing this quarter. We have a Tech in Motion in Orange County. We have a Sauce Day in Carlsbad. We'll send more documentation about it. And of course, Selenium Meetup we are doing today. So this is all we are talking from Test Armada side. That's it. I mean, any other questions, I'm happy to take it.
So I have a question on the tester and the development space. You have mentioned about Cucumber. That is a feature we can use if we use this package, or like how will you define when to use, when not to use?
Right.
In your current footprint.
Correct. So what we are working for Cucumber, okay, so I can repeat the question. The question was, what happens if you're using Cucumber, how Test Armada integrates with it, how you define the integration parameters, where and how, what options you have with Test Armada for using it with Cucumber or some other framework. So at high level, there are 2 ways you can use Test Armada. One is you're interfacing directly with the runner. The Magellan runner I was talking about, that could be a separate tech talk all on its own. But over there, we can create plugins for that, so that Magellan can interface with Cucumber, Magellan can interface with Mocha, Magellan can interface with Nightwatch, all that thing. And that time, what happens is you use Magellan to run it. It will add something to your system. You'll have to add some APIs in your calls also to make sure everything is going as per Magellan specification. But more often than not, people have already a 100 test case suite and they don't want to make any changes. They just want to see the reports, which I just showed. That I have my test, it's working, I just want to use the reports. So that's what my team is working on right now, is creating this, we call it Test Armada as a service. What it does is we build listeners. So if you're using Cucumber, I'm guessing you must be using JUnit or TestNG at the back or some other runner on top of TestNG. So we'll give you that TestNG listener, which will just sit in your POM file or Gradle, whatever you're using for your configuration. And as the test is you're running, it will store all the information and post it to our data insight service so you can see the same report. So the idea over here is that we don't want you to go make changes to your code or your classes to integrate with Test Armada. Just use our listener and see the reports. And with time, we'll build more on the service thing. That's one thing we are seeing, that people prefer more service-oriented architecture, where we are not making strict rules around that you have to use this framework, you have to use this plugin. If we give a reporting as a listener, the shard thing I was talking about, that could again be a service where it works on the CI slaves and create those shards for you automatically. The more and more thing we expose through services, it will be more flexible for teams, and it will be easier for team to adopt. So that's where we are going. Does that answer your question?
So I don't know, what is the ultimate goal for Walmart's lab to develop Test Armada?
Ultimate goal first is to get better quality for
Selenium
to beat what?
compete with Selenium, or
I mean that not compete with Selenium. We are built on top of Selenium, so
right.
we cannot compete with it. What we can do is that people who are using Selenium, make it a little more easier for them, share what we have done. So competing probably is not the way I would see it. It's like collaboration. That's how.
Given your analytics that you're doing carefully, how flaky are the tests?
Okay. So the question was, how flaky are the tests with the analytics we get? For PR jobs, especially for that's the most flakiness thing happen, because ultimately when the PR is merged, you have run some level of tests. So at master and deploy, you get less flakiness. Happens mostly at PR. And I don't have that number right now, but I think it was around 3 or 4% a few months back when we were doing that data. And the reason why is the mocking, I was saying. Because that's our secret sauce, because once you mock all the dependencies, and I'm not saying end-to-end test is not important. End-to-end test is very important. I'm not saying you should mock all the time. But there's different place and time for different kind of test. At PR, you just want to know that when I'm adding something, I'm not doing any negative thing to my code base. So at that time, it's okay to mock. But before you go to master or deploy, you should definitely have some end-to-end test cases. But adding that mocking has reduced our flakiness a lot. So that's why it's in single-digit numbers.
So of all of the things that your product can do, what does it not do yet that you would like it to be able to do soon? Like, do you have a sense of what the next big addition to it is, or
What the next big initiative?
addition, or what the next big kind of like step up your roadmap is?
Sure. So the question was, what's the next big item for Test Armada? What's the big initiative is? Right now, this is the Test Armada service I was talking about. We are trying to go from all this runner format to be completely service. At one point, if it really works fine, maybe next year or sometime, we could be completely service-based. So imagine open source service, which is running in somewhere outside of Walmart, and you guys can set it up without making any changes to your code. That will be the next big thing if you can get there. Like, you want to see the same reporting, you can add more plugins, add more panels, like a true open source project, and it's again running as a service, and you're running your jobs on Travis and getting reports on Sauce Labs and everything. Okay, all right. Yes, please.
Can you talk more about how it's used for native app on iOS and Android?
Sure thing. So on the native apps right now, we use the same Nightwatch. We call it TDK, Test Development Kit. pass it on as TDK inside Walmart. Uh, the team has developed some extra, Nightwatch by inherently doesn't support native apps, but we have added some extra modules to make sure. A lot of teams, what they're doing is they do web testing, and the same team also do some native modules also. So what we have built is that the experience should remain same. So Nightwatch with an Appium combination, that's the most common one. Yet there are teams who like instrumented tests, like Espresso or XCUI tests. We have some Espresso tests running too for the Android side. On XCUI test, we have very few teams who have tried it. There are teams who have tried some proof of concept, but never really a PR job kind of thing. So iOS has mostly been Appium-based test cases. It revolves between Nightwatch and some TestNG Java test cases. And of course, some instrumented Espresso test for Android. But Appium, we also have a big team doing React Native based application where the same JavaScript code goes for iOS and Android. That's again JavaScript TDK, which Nightwatch gets used there. So Nightwatch for most of the, Nightwatch Majan combination supports all the things, but we have some Espresso usage for native Android tests also. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. Okay, yes, Paul?
When you showed the gating, there was there's a suite that it didn't pass because only one test did not pass. What is your gating factor to that?
It won't go through unless, yes. If there's failure, that's why if there's any issue on Sauce Lab, everybody gets blocked. So you have like, it's a Boolean actually. And a lot of time people say that it's Boolean, why do we show reports? It's because that you get these reports and understand how it failed. Like if you see that report in that browser way, sometimes you see these nice patterns that all the tests fail on one Chrome browser or all the tests fail on two browsers. So it just helps you in visualizing that, but it's not for having some threshold. If one fails, it's a failure. You cannot go ahead.
Just curiosity about your CI practices. So if I'm a developer, I check something in, I move forward, I check something in, I break the functional test.
Okay.
Is it my responsibility to fix that, or is it the responsibility of the person who wrote the test?
So Walmart, the question was if during the PR, if a test fails, whose responsibility is to fix it? So 2 years back when Test Armada started, actually Test Armada started with that, the whole notion of that Walmart should not have a dedicated QE team. So now we have all engineers write test and code together, so there's no differentiation in terms of that this is a QE team who's just writing tests. Developers are responsible for that. There are still some SDET role, which are like each Scrum team can have 1 or 2 people focus more on high-level problems, but it's a responsibility of every developer to write the test, maintain the test, and the dev code. And actually, I mean, this is why we started working with Test Armada, because we wanted to make it easier for developers to bring in that culture. And that's how we started 2 years back. Though the project was there for 3.5 years, but 2 years back, which really got funding, and like we have a dedicated team to work on it. That's how we invested on it. Yes, please.
You change the scope of the tests based on the functionality of the exchange.
Change the scope of.
So if you run 1,000 tests, but realistically a change would only affect 200 of them, you run all of them.
That's a good one. Yeah, this is not, so the question was, do we change the scope of test suite based on how big is the PR, how much code is changed? So this is something, we don't do it right now, but that's something is very close to my heart in terms of I want to do this. Idea I have in my mind is, like if you're running JavaScript tests, you have Istanbul, you can do code coverage. So it'll be great to run all the tests, index all the code coverage, and track it, like how many test cases are touching how many classes. And if you can index it, and then the next time the PR happens, it'll be very easy to filter out that these test cases are responsible for that. That's something I definitely want to work on. This is, I have tried that. I mean, I've been thinking about this at Yahoo days, actually. We actually had a project over there, but didn't work out. But that's something I keep on thinking about it. So we don't have it right now, but if there's any open source project who's doing that, let me know. I would love to work on that. All right.
For the data analysis bit, which is coming soon, is there any machine learning aspect to it, or is it just simple coding?
So the question was for the data insight, is there any machine learning component to it or not, or aspect to it or not? Right now, we are just storing this data in our Cassandra and Solar databases. We have ideas about it. Like once we have all that data, we can do some predictive analysis and figure out where the failure should be. We have the whole Storm pipeline, which will enable us to do that. So right now, not, but we have been talking about it. But our first goal was to just get it open source, get it outside, but we'll definitely, it'll also help once we open source it to get more help from the community. So yes, we have thought about it, but we don't have any immediate plan right now. Okay, there's no more questions, then thanks for your time. Thank you, everyone.